Thucydides' trap. What can we learn from history that can impact what is happening in today? For Thucydides' trap, we can learn about the impacts of political power and the roles that each political power plays. Thucydides was an Athenian general until his eventual exile from Athens, at which point he relocated in Sparta and began accounting for the war that was about to take place between Athens and Sparta. Because Thucydides had prior experience with war, he was able to account very well the situations which led to the war. More specifically, he credited the fact that Sparta was afraid to lose their power, being that they were the current hegemon, and because Athens was rising at such an alarming rate, Sparta reacted in a violent way to stop them from gaining this power. Thucydides' trap takes place throughout history, so the war between Athens and Sparta is not the only account that we have of this happening. Other accounts include the various armed conflicts that the Habsburgs engaged in throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, in addition to World War I and II. Currently, political scientists have claimed that the power conflict between China and the United States will reflect what has happened in history, being the Thucydides trap, because China is raising at such a heady pace. They believe that the United States will react in a violent way to stop them from gaining this power. Despite this, political scientists now think that the current conflict in power between the United States and China will more than likely result in a peaceful resolution. It's more likely that they will share an equal amount of power than fight and clash in a negative way because of the detrimental impact that that war would have on both the United States and China. Thucydides' methods for accounting history had a very realistic approach versus some of the other historians during this time. He liked to include evidence being speeches and conversations between people from both sides. So Athens and Sparta each had accounts of citizens in his history, and his ultimate goal was to create an account of this war that could be used throughout history, because he believed that human nature was very predictable, so we could use this to look at how humans would react in the future. And so far, this theory that he had has proven to be true, because we've been able to use his theory of Thucydides' trap again and again and again. As far as Thucydides' political thought went, he was very anti-democratic. At this time, Athens had a democracy, which did exclude a fair number of the citizens in Athens, but besides that, he didn't think that the people who were allowed to vote should have that type of power, because they were merely citizens and did not have any type of political background. In addition to this, he also believed that Athens was prone to demagogy, which is an appeal that plays on people's emotions rather than their rational side. He believed that people were very prone to reacting emotionally, and that caused a self-destructive mindset in his eyes. Unfortunately, Thucydides did have a few flaws. One of the more important ones is that the book was unfinished. Thankfully, later in time, historians were able to go back and account for the rest of this, but it wasn't nearly to the degree that Thucydides had due to his political involvement. Although the ending of his book and the reiteration of other historians does make for a very interesting topic because of the differences in how they told their histories. Another flaw in Thucydides' trap is his lack of aspect that is not politically motivated. For instance, he does not account for the women in Athens and Sparta and their roles that they played, and how, despite the fact that they had a democracy, it was so few people that were allowed to participate in this democracy. Despite all of this, Thucydides has had an exponential impact on current day political science and history alike. It's regarded as one of the most meaningful historical accounts to date, and it has been used throughout history to predict how two powerhouses will resolve their conflicts. I believe that Thucydides will continue to be used throughout history due to the nature of this book. It offers a wonderful account of the characters in the differences between political figures and the citizens of each location and how their views impacted the overall conflict. Now that we have explored some of the topics that Thucydides covers, I would like to interview my cousin and see if she knows anything about Thucydides and get her reaction to how this has occurred throughout history and how she believes the conflict between China and the United States will resolve after learning about Thucydides' trap. This is Bonnie, my cousin. After watching the video that I just recorded and me explaining to you what Thucydides' trap is, what do you think will most likely resolve the conflict between China and the United States?
Ultimately, I think a outright conflict between the two countries in an armed sense is very unlikely. I think that in today's economy and in today's industries that countries are too interconnected, and that most world powers, especially those who are working towards expanding their reach, are going to want to maintain positive relationships with as much of the world as they can, and that because of the amount of, allyship between first world nations and the amount of dependence on merchandising and things like that, it would hurt a developing country's interest to pursue an armed conflict with another first world power. I also think it would be very bad for the world, just in general.
So you think it's very unlikely for this to resolve? What do you think is more likely to happen?
I think that it is going to continue as it already has. Truly, while China is rising quickly as a world power, it has been doing so for quite a few years now. It continues to grow, but this isn't a new thing. Mm-hmm. I think if America was going to step in and try to stop that from happening, it would have happened before they reached the level they are currently already at. I think that sanctions will continue to be put against countries who overstep bounds. I think that trade agreements will continue to be a very hot topic and issue. I think control of important parts of the world that are not a world power, so nations that are not as developed and that rely more heavily on bigger countries, are going to be areas of possibly smaller conflict, in ways like us giving military aid to a smaller country that is in conflict with China, or vice versa. But I don't foresee any outward aggression, not between us specifically.
Thank you for that.
No problem.
My name is Samantha Ingraffia, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this. This was originally filmed for my Change in Dynamics class, But if you were able to get any type of information out of it, that's wonderful, and I appreciate you all staying here with me.